I am Mira Hale, 32 years old. I am a process safety engineer at a petrochemical plant in Houston. My job is to imagine failure before it happens, identify every weak seal, every overlooked sensor, every cascade that starts with one unremarkable bolt and ends in fire. I spend my days writing protocols that keep disasters from breathing. None of that training helped when the neurologist said, "Prepare for the worst." My father had a massive stroke at work, and by the time I reached Houston Methodist, the elevator lights already felt like a language for a life I might not get to speak to again. I stood at the ICU doors, badge clipped to nothing, fingers stiff with shock. My mother's voice was a paper-thin whisper. "They're doing everything they can." The machines were calm, my father less so. I told myself to breathe like I teach contractors to breathe through emergency drills. Inhale, inventory, act. I drove home in the dark. I must have used my turn signal. I must have stopped at red lights. I must have parked. I don't remember any of it. I do remember the garage door closing. I remember my hand on the knob refusing to turn like the house was the last threshold between two versions of my life. Inside, the living room pulsed with ring light glow. Eli stood in front of the mirror, trying out angles, with oversized designer sunglasses, the ones he said were camp in a good way. His phone balanced on a tripod. The words spilling out of him had cadence but no weight. "Hey besties, Miami is here. Your boy is turning 30, and we're bringing solar flare energy only." He spotted my reflection behind his own. He didn't pause. He switched to a side profile and lifted the sunglasses to his hair. I was crying and didn't know it until a drop reached my lip. I wiped my face with the heel of my hand, the way I do when a valve blows a little coolant, and I keep talking anyway. My mouth opened to tell him, but the sentences were sand. He finally turned, saw the mess I was, and frowned as if I had spilled coffee on an edited thumbnail. "Mira, don't spiral right now, okay? You're killing my Miami energy." I don't remember anger. No shout, no storm. Something in me went very still and very cold, the way a plant goes silent when a sensor trips, fans whirring down, emergency lights clicking into clarity. "It's not rage, it's resolve." "You're right," I said. He smirked like he'd won a fight we hadn't had. He adjusted his hair, pushed the glasses up, and drifted back to the lens, to the person he loved most, the one inside that screen. I walked to my bedroom with the unhurried steps of a woman who has finally remembered where the off switch is. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulled my laptop close, and opened the airline portal. Non-refundable, yes. Non-transferable, not exactly. As purchaser and primary card holder, I converted both first-class tickets into flight credits under my name. A small box asked if I was sure. I have never been more sure. Next, American Express. One call. Remove authorized user. 4 minutes of my life and the sound of a door locking somewhere inside my chest. Then I dialed Riley, my best friend since sophomore year, and now a paralegal, with the kind of ethics that make bad people uncomfortable. No preamble. "Draft me a termination of guest stay, effective immediately." "On it," Riley said. "We'll attach inventory, timestamps, deed, who packed." "I will, tonight." "Good. Keep the body cam app on while you do." I called a 24-hour locksmith. He arrived at 11:15, quick and polite. I showed him the deed with Mira Hale in plain black letters. He changed the front door, back door, and the garage keypad while I took photos of every room with my phone set to timestamp every second. 2 boxes labeled ELI Tech went to the building's secure storage. Clothes, shoes, a drawer of cables, a ring light that looked like a moon with an ego. I made a list as neat as a lab log. At midnight, Riley's email hit my inbox. Subject line already written, "Notice of termination of guest stay." I added the attachments, deed, photos, inventory, building manager's counter signature, and hit send. The house exhaled. I picked up my keys and drove back to the hospital. The ICU waiting room chairs are the exact color of doing your best. My mother had fallen asleep with her arm along the vinyl, her fingers still curled toward the bed she wasn't sitting beside. A nurse brought me coffee that tasted like it had fought for its life. At 6:42 a.m., my phone started shaking across the side table. Eli. I let it buzz to voicemail. It called back. Again. Again. By the 11th call, I answered and said nothing. "What did you do?" His voice was too loud for morning. I'm at the airport, and they say my ticket is invalid, and my card just declined for a bottle of water. Mira, what did you do? I watched my father through glass, chest rising and falling against a rhythm that used to put me to sleep as a kid when he napped on Sundays. I kept my voice steady. It's my account, Eli, and you said I was killing your vibe. I'm not part of it anymore. Silence, then a hiss I used to mistake for passion. You're being dramatic. I hung up, turned my phone to silent, sat with the sunrise, discovering the city outside like it had never met us. By 9, there were messages from Deborah, his mother, accusing me of stranding her son, of humiliating him. Stranded? The airport is 20 minutes from her house. Eli is 30. He has a driver's license, sponsorship deposits, and a mother determined to treat choices like weather. I didn't argue. I blocked her number. I blocked Eli's. I blocked the cluster of creator friends whose names arrived at 3 a.m. and left with the sunrise. 3 days passed, measured by vitals, by social workers who spoke in careful circles, by my mother's hand on my wrist, and the way grief turns sleep into a cliff you keep walking off. When I finally drove home to grab work files, the garage mouth was closed by Eli's car idling perpendicular to my space. He leaned against his hood with a camera operator beside him, rig blinking red. The sweatshirt he wore said "Manifest Abundance" in gold letters. The irony tangled in my throat until it didn't feel like irony anymore. I stayed in my car, doors locked, windows up. My body knew better than to be bait. Eli approached my window and knocked with the knuckle he used for brand unboxings. "You stole my gear," he shouted. "You illegally evicted me. I have every right to be here." I called building security. "There's a man blocking my car in my private garage," I said. "I need assistance." While we waited, he performed rage for the lens. Lines he'd practiced, I could tell. "She took thousands of dollars of equipment," he told the camera. "We lived together. I contributed." The camera operator's eyes flicked to me, then down. He knew something, or knew enough to look away. Security arrived in 5 minutes. Houston PD 10 after that. I rolled my window 2 inches and passed through a tidy folder. Deed, email chain, offering scheduled pickup through Riley, notarized inventory list, a screenshot of Eli's own text from months ago. "Thanks, babe. Your place is way nicer. I'll crash here for a while." "Do you have a lease?" an officer asked Eli. "No, but I lived here for over a year." "Did you pay rent?" He hesitated. "I contributed in non-monetary ways." The officer turned from the folder to Eli, patient the way a person is when the answer won't change. "You are not a tenant, sir. You are a guest. The property owner has the right to end a guest's stay. If you don't leave right now, you will be arrested for trespassing." The red light on the rig went dark, a tiny mercy. Eli blanched, then blustered, then left. As he opened his car door, the camera operator muttered, barely a whisper, but the garage gave it back to me. "Didn't you ship that pricey rig to Delia's place anyway so she could film the unbox?" Delia, the ex who still collaborated when it was good for numbers. An old door creaked in my head. I didn't open it. I took my files upstairs. The house smelled like new metal, locks recently born. In the quiet, I realized something simple and undeniable. I hadn't escalated anything. I had just refused to keep subsidizing a story where pain was an inconvenience and love was a subscription I couldn't cancel. Back at the hospital that evening, my mother stirred when I sat. "Did you get what you needed?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "I did." A nurse dimmed a light, not the one that protected the machines, but another, small, gentle, made for human eyes. Through the window, the city was waking into its softest version of morning. I thought of Miami neon, of sunglasses big enough to eclipse a person's face, of a ring light that demanded you stand in the center. Then I looked at the glow over my father's bed, the kind of light that doesn't perform but sees. I reached for my mother's hand and held it there, steady as a protocol. I didn't expect peace to arrive in the form of silence. No texts, no calls, no footsteps that weren't mine. Just the hum of the fridge and the sound of the AC cutting in and out like the house was exhaling relief. For 3 days, I lived between the ICU and those walls. Every time I returned home, it felt cleaner. Not because I'd scrubbed it, but because something toxic had finally been flushed out. Until the morning, my phone buzzed itself off the counter. 43 missed calls. Not just from Eli, from his mother Deborah, from his collab circle, from a cousin I'd met once at Thanksgiving. The voicemails stacked up like spam from another universe. Deborah's voice cracked with anger. Mira, how could you do this? He's stranded in Miami with no cash, no working card. He's humiliated. What kind of woman does that to someone she claims to love? I stared at my father's chart as I listened, each beep of the heart monitor punctuating her words. When she finally paused for breath, I said calmly, Deborah, he's 30. He has sponsorship income, a car, and a mother 20 minutes from the airport. He isn't stranded, he's inconvenienced. I'm at the hospital, my father's dying, I have to go. Then I hung up and blocked her. That afternoon, Riley texted, He's called me 17 times about the storage unit. I told him if he shows up without an appointment, we'll file for harassment. I almost smiled. 17 sounded like Eli, persistent when performing, silent when accountable. 3 days later, a Tuesday, I finally drove home to grab some work files. It was a bright 2 p.m., Houston heat pressing against the windshield. As I turned into the garage, I froze. Eli's car, blocking my spot, hood still warm. He was standing there, cropped hoodie, joggers, gold letters on his chest reading Manifest Abundance. Beside him, a guy holding a camera rig. Recording. Red light blinking. I didn't even turn off the engine. My instinct said, don't step out. Eli strode toward my car window and tapped with exaggerated calm. Open up, Mira. Let's talk like adults. I stayed still. You stole my camera gear, he shouted. You can't just evict me like that. It's illegal. You're on video right now. The world's going to see how you treat people. The world. That was his audience. Always was. I pulled out my phone and dialed building security. There's a man blocking my garage, I said evenly. He's refusing to leave. Security was there in 5 minutes. Houston PD in 10. When the officer asked for proof, I handed him the folder I'd prepared. Deed. Time-stamped photos. The official notice of termination of guest stay Riley drafted. Everything labeled, organized, notarized. The officer turned to Eli. Do you have a lease agreement with Ms. Hale? Eli blinked, caught off guard. No, but I've lived here for over a year. Did you pay rent? He hesitated. Not in cash, but I contributed in other ways. The officer raised an eyebrow. Sir, this isn't a debate. You're not a tenant. You're a guest. The property owner has the right to end your stay at any time. If you refuse to leave, you'll be arrested for trespassing. The camera guy shifted awkwardly, whispering something I barely caught. Didn't you ship that expensive rig to Delia's place anyway? Delia, his ex, the same one he swore was just a friend and fellow creator. My stomach twisted, but I didn't show it, not yet. Eli's face went pale. The cop repeated, Sir, it's time to leave. He finally climbed into his car. The camera light went off. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I watched him drive away. Not victorious, not humbled, just exposed. That night, I sat beside my father's bed. The ICU lights glowed low, rhythmic, kind. My mother dozed in a chair, her hand still resting on the blanket that covered his arm. I wanted to cry, but couldn't. The tears had calcified somewhere behind my eyes. All I could think about was that phrase, Miami energy, the way he said it like a religion, and how, for 2 years, I'd lived by it without realizing I was a disciple of someone else's performance. A week later, Eli finally scheduled his pickup. He arrived with Deborah, the camera guy, and a handwritten missing items list. At the top, $3,200 camera rig. Riley was waiting with the clipboard and the signed inventory. He opened the labeled boxes in front of them. Cables, a ring light, microphones, but no camera rig. Eli's face reddened. It was in my closet. She must have hidden it. Riley pointed to the line item. 2 boxes labeled Eli Tech Equipment. Nothing missing, he said. Deborah exploded. You thief! You stole from my son and threw him out like trash. We'll see you in court. Before I could respond, the cameraman made his fatal mistake. He muttered, Dude, you had that rig shipped to Delia's place so Mira wouldn't find out. Silence. Deborah froze. Eli's jaw tightened. Riley shut the clipboard. We're done here. Eli snatched his boxes. Deborah muttered something about vindictive women dying alone. Riley didn't flinch. Your son lived rent-free for 18 months and told her she was ruining his vibe while her father was dying. Goodbye, Mrs. Cole. They left without another word, and for a moment the house felt like it was breathing again, like the locks and walls were grateful too. That night I returned to the hospital. The same vinyl chair, the same blinking monitors. My father's hand was warm but unmoving. My mother whispered prayers she half remembered from childhood. I watched the slow rhythm of his chest and thought about how people can suffocate in a room full of oxygen if they're with someone who drains the air for attention. And then I realized I could finally breathe again. My father passed away 12 days later. It was early morning, a gray light seeping through the blinds of the ICU. The monitors stopped their steady pulse, and the silence that followed felt both deafening and merciful. My mother and I each held one of his hands. He never woke up after the stroke, but I like to think he knew we were there. We stayed in that room for another hour. Neither of us could move. Neither of us wanted to. When the nurse finally came in, she didn't rush us. She simply touched my mother's shoulder, said, "Take your time," and left the room again. That was the moment the world shifted from before to after. The days after the funeral blurred together. My mother stayed at my townhouse, drifting through the rooms like a ghost. We made tea. We didn't drink. We turned on the TV, but never followed the plot. The house still smelled faintly of Eli's cologne, something citrusy and synthetic that clung to the curtains like it didn't want to be forgotten. I opened every window, hoping the wind would do what I couldn't, clear him out completely. My neighbor, Dr. Theo Ramirez, showed up one afternoon with a quiet knock. He worked in the ICU, the same floor where my father had been. He was soft-spoken, kind, a little awkward in a way that felt real. He didn't offer condolences or say things like, "Time heals." He just handed me 2 paper bags filled with groceries and said, "You probably haven't eaten anything real in days. Eggs, soup, bread, fruit. No rush on the dishes, just eat something." Then he smiled once, small and sincere, and left. That kind of care, the practical kind, meant more than any sympathy card. A week later, a certified letter arrived. The return address was a law office I didn't recognize. The first line read, "Demand for payment and notice of intent to sue." I actually laughed at first, half disbelieving, half exhausted. Eli was suing me. The letter itemized everything he wanted. $300 for the stolen camera rig that had never been in my house, $100 for the canceled Miami trip, $1,000 for emotional damages, and $600 for vintage flamingo neon art. The flamingo was from Target, $29 on clearance. I took a photo of the letter and sent it to Riley. Within seconds, she called me. "Oh my God, this is amateur hour," she said, flipping through the pages. He literally attached screenshots from his own Instagram stories as proof. "Mira, this guy is delusional." Riley drafted a 3-page response that afternoon. She dismantled every claim, attached the deed, the email chain, the police report, the inventory list. She ended the letter with a line that sounded like a lawyer's version of a mic drop. "Further harassment will result in counteraction for defamation and abuse of process." I signed it. Riley mailed it. And for 2 weeks, nothing happened. Until the phone call. It was 6 a.m. when Riley's name lit up my screen. "He got arrested last night," she said. "What?" "Vandalized a shared studio space. Smashed thousands of dollars in equipment. He live-streamed the whole thing. Sponsors dropped him. The studio owner pressed charges." I sat up in bed. The sunlight on the wall looked foreign, like the room didn't recognize me anymore. Later that morning, my phone buzzed again. "Deborah." "Mira, I know you must hate us, but Eli's in a dark place. He's lost everything. He needs someone to believe in him. Please, as a mother, I'm asking you to help." Her voice cracked at the end, the same way it had when she called from the airport weeks ago. I didn't answer right away. I stared at the framed photo of my dad on the nightstand, his hand on my shoulder, from some long-ago family barbecue. Then I said quietly, "Deborah, your son had someone who believed in him. He mistook it for permission. I'm done being his safety net." I hung up. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. The house was still, almost too still. My mother had gone back to her apartment that morning. I walked into the kitchen and made a cup of coffee. The mug trembled in my hand. Not from sadness this time, but from the shock of stillness after months of chaos. Then a text came through. "Theo, I'm walking to Herman Park. Want to join? No pressure." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed, "Yes." We walked for almost an hour without saying much. The city moved quietly around us. Joggers, ducks, the sound of cicadas. When we sat on a bench near the pond, Theo said softly, "I'm sorry about your dad. He was a good man. Nurses talked about him. Said he smiled, even in the coma." I nodded, eyes burning. He did that. Smiled through everything. Theo didn't reach out or try to fix it. He just let the silence exist between us, comfortable and human. And for the first time since all of this began, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness, not relief, just a small, steady breath that didn't hurt to take. Grief changes your sense of time. Days didn't pass anymore. They folded. One moment, I was washing the same coffee mug over and over. The next, I was sitting in Riley's office staring at a stack of legal documents that had just arrived. Eli had filed the lawsuit. Not a bluff, not a threat. A real small claims case. The same list of demands. $300 for the missing camera rig. $400 for the Miami trip. $1,000 for emotional distress. $600 for the vintage flamingo art. Riley sighed so deeply it rattled her desk plant. He's really doing this. He's going to embarrass himself in open court. I smiled faintly. Then let's make sure he does it thoroughly. The hearing was set for a Tuesday morning. That day, Houston was bright and humid, the kind of air that clings to you like anxiety. I dressed in a simple navy dress, hair pulled back, no makeup except what made me look alive. Riley met me at the courthouse steps, her binder thick with evidence tabs. Inside, the courtroom felt smaller than I expected. Sterile walls, humming lights, a single judge at the bench. Eli sat at the plaintiff's table beside Deborah, both of them whispering. He wore a fitted blazer that didn't quite fit his shoulders, his hair styled to perfection. A ring-light glow still clung to him, like he'd tried to curate humility and failed. When the judge entered, we all stood. She was a woman in her 60s, silver hair tied neatly, glasses low on her nose. She didn't look amused. Eli spoke first. He talked about a committed relationship, about creative collaboration, about how I'd supported him financially with the understanding that it was an investment in their shared life. He kept saying shared, like repetition could make it true. Then he claimed I'd illegally evicted him and stolen valuable equipment vital to his livelihood. The judge interrupted him halfway through. Mr. Cole, do you have documentation of joint ownership or a rental agreement? He hesitated. Not written, no, but she promised. Do you have proof of the alleged stolen camera? Eli flipped through his papers, hands trembling. No, but she hid it. It's worth thousands. Riley leaned close and whispered, He's unraveling. When it was my turn, I stood, hands steady on the folder. I walked the judge through every piece of evidence. My property deed with only my name. Time-stamped emails offering scheduled pickup for his belongings. Police report confirming he was classified as a guest, not a tenant. Credit card statements showing every Miami expense under my account. Screenshots of his own post unboxing the camera rig at Delia's apartment, captioned, New gear alert. Had to ship it to my girl's place so Mira wouldn't ruin the surprise. When I finished, the silence in the room was almost theatrical. The judge folded her hands. Mr. Cole, you lived rent-free in Ms. Hale's home for 18 months. You made no financial contributions, and when her father was dying, you told her she was ruining your birthday vacation energy. And now you claim she owes you for a trip she paid for, property never in her possession, and decor she purchased? Eli opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Your claims are baseless and frankly insulting. This case is dismissed with prejudice. You may not refile. The gavel hit the desk. Deborah jumped up, her voice rising. He loved her. She used him. The judge's eyes cut through her like glass. Madam, one more word and I'll hold you in contempt. Deborah's mouth snapped shut. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, muttering something about ungrateful women. Eli followed, shoulders rigid, never looking back. Riley turned to me, a rare smile breaking through her professional calm. You did it. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. We did. Outside, the sun hit me like applause. It was a loud, beautiful Houston afternoon, the kind of light my father used to call engineer's light, sharp enough to see every flaw, every detail, every truth. Riley clapped me on the shoulder. He'll fade fast. People like him always do once the performance ends. I nodded. He already has. I drove home with the windows down. The world smelled different, lighter. That evening, my mother came over for dinner. I made her grilled fish and tea, and we sat on the patio in the soft amber glow of the porch light. She looked at me, eyes gentler than they'd been in months. Your father would be proud. You finally protected yourself the way you protect everyone else. I smiled, not to perform, but because something inside me finally unknotted. The porch light flickered in the wind. Maybe, I said. Maybe I finally learned what kind of light is worth keeping on. After the court hearing, life didn't change overnight. But the air around me did. The silence that once felt hollow now felt clean. The weight that had lived in my chest for months had dissolved, leaving space for something unfamiliar but peaceful. Eli faded quickly. The creator gossip pages had already moved on to another scandal. His sponsors disappeared, his followers scattered, and the last time I checked, before I stopped checking, his page was private, the glow dimmed, the ring light unplugged. I didn't hate him. I didn't wish him harm. I just wished him away. A week after the hearing, I sat at my kitchen table going through papers when I noticed the unused flight credits from the canceled Miami trip, $6,000, sitting there. I called my mother into the room. "Where have you always wanted to go?" I asked. She looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" "Anywhere," I said. "Pick a place." She hesitated, smiling shyly, like she'd been waiting her whole life for someone to ask that. "San Diego," she finally said. "I've always wanted to see the ocean again." So I booked her a ticket for the following month. When the confirmation email came through, I forwarded it to her with one line. "The money's going to someone who deserves it." She cried, the kind of quiet cry that makes your own eyes sting. And for the first time since my father's passing, I didn't cry with grief. I cried with relief. In the days that followed, Theo started showing up more often. Not in a grand, dramatic way, just small gestures. Coffee on my porch before work. A walk in the park after sunset. He never asked about Eli. He didn't tiptoe around my grief. He just existed beside it. We talked about ordinary things, the smell of rain before a storm, the best late-night diners in Houston, how both of us still found comfort in the sound of hospital machines because it meant someone was fighting to live. He told me about his sister, who he used to drive to the beach every summer just to watch her collect seashells. She passed away years ago, and I could tell he understood loss the same way I did. Not as an event, but as a quiet companion. Last weekend, I drove alone to Galveston Bay. The sky was that strange kind of gold that only happens when the day refuses to end. The ocean stretched out in front of me, calm, endless, forgiving. There was a neon sign flickering at the pier, advertising a seafood restaurant. The light buzzed and flickered, pink and blue reflections trembling across the water. For a moment, I thought about Eli, about all the bright things he chased, the lights that demanded to be seen, not the ones that quietly kept you warm. He wanted fame, applause, validation from strangers. He wanted Miami energy. But the lights that mattered were never those. The soft lamp I left on for my mother when she couldn't sleep. The ICU light that kept my father safe for as long as it could. The porch light that Theo turned off before we left for coffee, whispering, "You don't need to leave it burning for ghosts." I looked out over the water, the wind pulling my hair across my face, and smiled. I didn't regret any of it. Not the heartbreak, not the lawsuit, not even the grief that cracked me open. Because in the breaking, I learned how to see. Before leaving the pier, I texted Theo. "Next time we drive down together." He replied a minute later. "Deal, I'll bring coffee." As the sun sank lower, the flickering neon lost its color. The world went soft, quiet, real. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was chasing the light. I was standing in it,